And we will, as I've mentioned here now, that the Bhagavad Gita is the instruction manual, and the Bhagavatam is the practical application. Why is it the practical application? Because the Bhagavatam is just examples given of all of these lessons. And the Bhagavatam is very amazing. It's such a wide scripture, right? It's like the 18,000 verses, right? As compared to 1,800 verses in the Bhagavad Gita. Oh, 700 verses, what am I saying? In the Bhagavad Gita, right? So vast scripture. But in the scripture, every single type of person is described. Okay, from all different, not just persons, all different types of living entities are described and how they use these lessons and practically apply them to achieve a supreme goal in life. For example, even a dog is given as an example, an elephant, Gajendra, or so many other examples of the animal species. There's examples of the plant and sea, marine species. There's example of children. There's example of men, of women, of a very poor person, a very king, aristocratic person, a saintly person, a sinner. All different kinds of examples are taken. And we can say, hey, I fit into one of these categories. For example, a business person can relate to the business example given in the Shastra. A warrior can relate to Arjuna, etc., etc. So we can take from these examples and then we relate to them better. Does that make sense? Okay. So now, number 3 is your contribution. So what can you do to make this course better for you and I? So Krishna says in Gita 4.39, a faithful man who is absorbed in transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses quickly attains supreme spiritual peace. Right? So if we have faith, then we can really move forward. So here, in our tradition, there are stages of bhakti, stages of devotion. And the first stage is Shraddha. Shraddha means faith. Shraddha sadhu sangha prabhajana kriya anartha tatha nishtha ruchi ashakti bhav, like this. But first step is faith. And if you don't have faith, well then it doesn't matter what I teach you or what we do here today. Because without some faith on your own part, then I am just a puppet simply talking, right? So Krishna says, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditional life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. Okay? So if we have firm faith in these words of the Bhagavad Gita, then we can ultimately make progress. The second thing is that sometimes, especially for our younger audience, maybe even the older audience too, is that some of the stories we hear in the Bhagavatam or in our Puranas or Upanishads, they seem like mythology. They seem extraordinarily inconceivable. They seem extraordinary and inconceivable. And some people say they're fake. They're just stories to teach lessons. Right? That's one level of understanding. And today we're going to discuss one story that may seem, from our own material mind and perspective, how is this possible? How is this possible? So with this, I'd like to counter, because it is very natural for our minds to think in this way. Because we go to school, we're trained in the field of science. Some things don't mesh well with science, right? Some things don't mesh well with science. And then it says, wait, this is all just a bunch of stories from the history of the past, and maybe there's some good lessons in it. Okay. I would like to counter to you that science is also subject to correction. Subject to correction. And I'll tell you how. So for 531 years ago, in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the seas. discovered what? America. Okay, he discovered America. So when Christopher Columbus took off from Spain and he came to America, what did he think?
He was in India.
He thought it was India.
He thought it was India. Okay, yes, that's fine. What was he scared of? What was he scared of? Anybody know? What did he think the world was? It's flat. It's flat. He thought the world was flat. And he thought if you go across the ocean and you go to the edge, you fall off. Right? And then if you go to the other edge, you fall off. So you got to stay within the border. Okay? That's 530 something years ago. The world was flat. And let me tell you, great scholars that we appreciate today, like Newton, also thought this. Right? They also believed in this kind of concept because that was what their mind had given them at that time. They didn't have tools like satellites and telescopes and all these other different mechanisms that we have today. So just 500 years ago, if you think about the history of the Earth, just 500 years ago, human beings thought the world was flat. Now, you're like, okay, well, that's 500 years ago. Now we're so advanced. Okay, let me give you an example just in my childhood. When I went to school, right, there were two theories that were very prominent. One was the theory of evolution. The theory of evolution, and how humans came. And that was called Darwinism. That we came from monkeys or gorillas or whatever. And gradually, as we learned through nature, then we became humans, more consciousness, and that's how we became human. That is literally what our textbook said is the most applicable theory of our age. And that was 30 years ago. And now, I spent some time Googling, like, what is today's theory on evolution? And it's completely different. Why? Because they now understand DNA, they understand genetics, and they understand, wait, this DNA does not match up accordingly, so Darwin theory is now defunct. Similarly, how the world was created, dinosaurs, all these different things, right? Nowadays, I think it's Big Bang theory is a prominent theory. Previously, in my time, it was a completely different theory, the explosion of the... anyway, I'm getting too deep into this. My point is that science is subject to correction as well. And I think that these few examples have shown some proof of that. So if you're hung up on science, well then make sure you come back in your next few lives, 500 years from now, and then you'll think of something totally different, okay, as tools progress. Similarly, by having faith in the Vedic scriptures, and there are tremendous amounts of proof also that the Vedic scriptures statements match up with what we perceive today. For example, many people did not believe in the bridge that was built by Lord Ram between India and Lanka. And then, of course, when satellites, I think this was in the 2000s, satellites discovered the Ram Setu or Adam's Bridge, then they said, wait, this is a man-made bridge, right? Or things like the Sonark Temple or Kailash Temple or many other temples. How could this possibly be done by humans like us? Okay, so have some faith in the scripture and try not to let your mental, material capacity get in the way. Fair? Okay. And then finally, let's go. Okay, so we're ready to start. Today, in the next few weeks, we're going to spend some time learning about the story of Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj. How many of you have heard of the story of Prahlad? Can you raise your hands high, please? Okay, so 60, 70% of you. And good, I'm glad, because not everybody has heard about it. Don't worry if you've never heard it. Today we're going to go through everything. And also, if you're one of those people that have heard about it, then I can assure you, if we read exactly what the Bhagavatam says in great detail, then, and it's given in very, very big detail, a great detail, that there are going to be some things that you don't know. Okay? And the reason I picked this story is because you guys see this book here? This is the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is just one of the books. Okay, this is called the seventh canto or the seventh book. and it's 12 books in total. Okay, so the 7th canto, you can see how thick it is, yeah? So imagine this whole book consists of, I think, 13 chapters, 12, 13 chapters. And 11 of those chapters are dedicated to Prahlad Maharaj. So one whole book, pretty much, is dedicated to Prahlad Maharaj. So how much importance Sri Vedavyas, who is the writer of the Bhagavatam, gave to Prahlad. Okay, so we can learn a lot. And of course, our Gurudev and our Guru Varga repeatedly told the story of Prahlad Maharaj because it's essential to understanding the teachings of the Gita. So, how many of you know Hiranyakashipu? Hiranyakashipu, what is his name? Say it. No.
Hiranyakashipu.
Hiranyakashipu. Okay, very difficult name, yeah? Hiranyakashipu. So Hiranyakashipu was a demon. Okay? He was a demon and he was a great king. How many of you have heard of Ravan? You heard of Ravan?
Yeah.
Have you heard of Ravan? Good. Okay. So Hiranyakashipu was a great demon king. He was very, very powerful. Extremely powerful. Okay? And he had demoniac nature. In fact, his mother and his father was a sage actually. His father was a sage, Kashyap Muni. And his mother was Diti. So when Kashyap and Diti bore children, unfortunately there was a time when they did a fault when they conceived of Hiranyakashipu, when they conceived him. There was a fault made, we can go into detail, but for now, due to this fault, then Diti and Kashyap had 2 sons, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksh. Okay, they're 2 brothers. Okay, so Hiranyaksh, can anybody tell me about Hiranyaksh? Or do they know about Hiranyaksh? This story comes right before in the Bhagavatam. So Hiranyaksh was also, just like his brother, a very strong demoniac king. And they wanted to take over the entire universe. So what did they do? They gained great power. And one day Hiranyaksh says, I would like to destroy the earth. I would like to destroy the earth. And he plunders the earth at the bottom of the ocean. Okay? This is how powerful the demoniac kings were at that time. So when he did this, then all the residents of the heavenly kingdom, heavenly planets, the demigods, they all approached Lord Vishnu and said, please rescue this planet Earth. So Lord Vishnu appears as Varahadev, or the boar incarnation, and rescues and then kills Hiranyaksh. Rescues the earth and kills Hiranyaksh. You can see the battle here. So when Hiranyaksh dies, okay, when Hiranyaksh dies, his brother becomes extremely furious. Does that make sense? Like if your brother was killed by somebody, what do you want? You want revenge. You want revenge. So Hiranyakashipu says, how dare do they kill my great brother? Who has done this? And he discovers Lord Vishnu. He says, okay, because this Lord Vishnu thinks that he is greater than me, then I will prove him completely wrong. I will prove him wrong, and I will show him my strength. I will show him my power. And what does he do? He orders all of his soldiers, all of the demoniac soldiers, right? He orders them to go and destroy all of those things or all of those Vedic sacrifices, Vedic rituals, all the people who are devoted to Lord Vishnu, and so on and so forth, and slowly take over the entire world. And he orders this because he is very spiteful, and he wants to take over the entire universe. Now, if you read chapter 16 in the Bhagavad Gita, then Krishna discusses there are 2 natures within people, the divine nature and the demoniac nature. So the epitome or the best example of the demoniac nature is Hiranyakashipu, who cares nothing for anyone else, but only cares for his own power and strength. So he orders the attack across the entire universe. And he also does a second thing, which is very interesting. while his soldiers are plundering the entire universe, his sister-in-law and his mother and his nephews, right, the sons of his brother, the wife of his brother, and the mother, of course, of both of them, what are they doing? They are crying. They're lamenting that, oh, my son, my husband, my father has died. And what does Hiranyakashipu do? See, Hiranyakashipu is not just a great and powerful demon by accident. Right? Just like for those of you who know the story of Ravan too was very learned. And Ravan actually studied all the Vedic scriptures. Ravan was very learned. He worshipped Lord Shiva. And he could, in many other Ramayans, he's actually described as a very wise and knowledgeable person. Right? And he gives even pravachans or instructions to others. So similarly, Hiranyakashipu also gives instructions to his family members. And what does he say? He says that you are not the body, you are the soul. Therefore, my brother has actually not died. You should not lament for him because it is just his body. Right? It is just his body. Then he also gives instructions that the goal of life is not to simply acquire material things and to take care of this body. That this body, inside this body, there's a spirit soul, and it has a separate goal. And one should, interestingly enough, one should practice and learn from the Vedic scriptures. Right? Now, these instructions are all instructions that you all have heard too, right? But Hiranyakashipu takes them completely differently. See, sometimes we take the same instructions and two people apply them in a totally different manner. For example, we may say, we may use a statement which is true according to the scripture, that by praying to the Lord you can get anything you want. You can get anything you want. So there are two people, they may say, oh, really? I can get anything I want? Well, then I'll ask for A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z. I'll get good grades, I'll get a beautiful house, a beautiful wife or husband, whatever, right? So they may take it that way, and that's okay. And then there's a second person who says, wait, if I'm not the body, I'm the soul, and by worshiping the Lord I can get anything. Well, what is that highest thing that I should ask for? And then finally another person might say, oh, you can get anything? Can I be the Lord? Right? Can I be the Lord? If he can give me anything, why can't he make me like him? So even though the instructions are the same, we have to be very careful to apply them in the correct manner. Because somebody like Hiranyakashipu can be very educated, but unfortunately applies them in a totally wrong manner. So Hiranyakashipu, his soldiers are going and plundering the world, he's giving instructions, and then finally at the end of it he says, now I will go and perform austerity. I will go and perform some tapasya. And he says that because if I do this austerity, then I will ask for the power to defeat Vishnu, right? My greatest enemy, the enemy of my life. So he performs incredible austerities. Does anybody know what he does? The picture kind of gives a little hint. It's kind of a blurry picture, and I did on purpose, actually. Anybody know what he does?
Offered his body.
He offered his body? Okay, how? How did he do that? So he goes to a mountain named Mandarajan Mountain, and he goes to the top of the mountain. Imagine if you're at the top of the mountain, very cold, very difficult conditions, etc. And he stands on one foot, like the tree pose. We do the tree pose in yoga class, right? Then he stands on one foot for, anybody know how long? Thousands of years, 10,000 years. Yeah? 10,000 years. Again, the material mind will be like, wait, 10,000 years, that doesn't work. Okay, but he performs austerity for 10,000 years. He stands in one place, concentrating on Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma, actually. Ravan was Lord Shiva. So Lord Brahma, right? And he's concentrating on Lord Brahma, and he does not eat, he does not sleep, he does not take any water, he does not move, he does not do anything. So what happens after so long, and this is where this picture kind of shows, that his body slowly gets eaten. His body slowly gets eaten by ants, and they build an anthill around it, just like if a rock was there, because the ants are eating his flesh, and so on and so forth. Finally, it's described when his austerity is so severe, so heavy, it's described the whole world becomes very hot, and Suryadev comes and tries to destroy his austerity, and so many other things. But Lord Brahma finally becomes pleased with his austerity, and says, what? So first he takes some water and sprinkles it on him, and then he regains a completely new body, a very strong body. And then he says, my dear son Hiranyakashipu, you have done so much austerity for me, meditating on me for thousands of years without any flinch. In fact, in all of history in the past and in all of the future, there will be no one like you that does this kind of austerity. So he says, you ask for any boon, you ask for any wish. You ask for any wish, right? And Lord Brahma says, but there's one thing I cannot grant you. So before you ask, be very careful. What is that thing that I cannot grant you? Immortality. Because I myself don't have immortality. I too have a lifespan described in the Bhagavatam, that one day of Brahma is equal to 1,000 cycles of the Yuga. That's one day. Then he has one night. Right? And then he lives for 100 years. So though his lifespan is so big, he too says, I cannot grant you this immortality. But you can ask anything else. So being very intelligent and also being very cunning, Hiranyakashipu begins to ask for so many different boons that he figured would make him basically like immortal. Right? It would make him like an immortal person. So he says, Brahma, may I not die inside or outside. Okay? May I not die in the daytime or the night. May I not die on the ground or in the sky. May I not die by anyone created by you. May I not die by any weapon or any human or any animal, or he mentions snake, any demigod, any other demon, or any being created in your universe. Right? So he's trying to cover what? All of his bases. He's like, okay, inside, outside, on the sky, daytime, night. Where is there left a chance for me to die? And then he says, give me lordship over all living beings in this world. Right? And give me the mystic powers obtained by the yogis who have meditated for thousands of years. Give me all of those mystic powers. So he asks him for basically strength, power, protection, and all of these different things, right? And he tries to cover his entire bases. Now, in the meantime, while he's doing this austerity for 10,000 years, right? What are the demigods thinking? The demigods thinking, the king has left the palace. Now it is time to attack. Okay? They've been tortured for so many years. Finally, he's going to a mountain. He's staying in one place for a long time, the biggest henchman of them all. Now is our time to get back what we lost. So the demigods then go and attack his kingdom while he's away. And of course, because Hiranyakashipu is not there, they're able to take all of it back. And they take his palace back. And the god Indra then sees Hiranyakashipu's wife. And her name is Kayadu. Okay? Try to remember these names. Hiranyakashipu's wife is Kayadu. Now you can see in this picture, Lord Indra comes and he's trying to, what? Trying to capture the wife of Hiranyakashipu. And she's pregnant. She has a child in the womb. And he wants to kill her. Right? Because he says, in Sanskrit, like, whoever's father is so great, imagine what his child can do. So because his father was such a great demon, then imagine what the kid can do. Yeah? So he wants to kill her. But the intervention of a great sage, his name is Narad Muni. Narad Muni comes in the way and he says, wait, O Indra, do not kill the wife of Hiranyakashipu. He says, why? Don't you know what he's done to us for so long? And finally we have the opportunity to say, okay, kill before this child is born, kill it at the root, right? Before the weed comes up, let's kill it at the root. And Narad Muni says, no, but inside the womb of this woman is a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. So Indra says, okay, he circumambulates Kayadu Devi, and then he leaves. And Narad Muni then takes Kayadu to his ashram. Okay? And Narad Muni begins saying to Kayadu that you may spend as much time as you like in my ashram while your husband is performing the austerities. Okay? So she stays in Narad Muni's ashram for 10,000 years. Now, as time is going on, Narad Muni, of course, being a devotee, being a sage, he instructs Kayadu of all the teachings of the Vedic scriptures. Okay? And he instructs them, but Kayadu, what happens to her? She sometimes feels a bit sleepy. Just like you guys are yawning right there. Yeah, you guys feel a little sleepy when you hear these kind of classes. Oh gosh, right? Why can't it be more entertaining? Well, I try to do group activities, some of you don't want to do. So in any case, she begins getting sleepy. And who is listening though? Is the child within the womb. The child within the womb is listening to the instructions of Narad as he's saying them. And he is very alert and attentive. And it's described in the Bhagavatam that when a child is in the womb, it's a very difficult situation for them. Just so you can imagine, you're rolled up in a small ball inside the womb of a mother and you have nowhere to go. Right? Though your mother and the people around the mother are so happy, you're about to bear a child, they're so happy, the child itself is feeling an intense amount of suffering. And also the mother, sometimes she eats ice cream, cold ice cream, and it's sweet and cold. The child has to eat that. And then sometimes she eats very spicy, hot Cheetos. Whatever, right? She's eating something very spicy. And the child also feels some effect on that. So the mother gets cravings. Some people think it's the child that's telling them the cravings, but actually the child is just taking whatever the mother decides to take. Similarly, it's described that when one has a child, for those of you who haven't had children yet, then or may have children, then by hearing, the child can still understand. Even in modern science, they say if you put some headphones with like Beethoven music, whatever, then the child becomes intelligent and all that. So the child has the ability to hear, even though they can't see anything and they can't touch anything, they have the ability to hear. So this example, Narad Muni is giving to the instructions to the mother, ultimately the child is the one that absorbs them all. So, as Hiranyakashipu, once he finishes all the austerity, he gains all of the power and the boons, then he just terrorizes the entire world, right? So he gets back everything that was lost while he was away. And it's described that even though he obtained everything, he obtained kingdom over the three worlds, he actually took over Indra's planet, he put Indra down in jail, then he sits on his throne, all these different things that he obtains. Even it's described Mother Earth was so fearful of Hiranyakashipu that she would give grains even though the rains wouldn't happen. The oceans would give the jewels and medicines and all this, even though they weren't properly being taken care of. Because out of fear or out of love, we sometimes react the same way, right? But despite having all of these things, all of this power, all of this prestige, it's described that Hiranyakashipu remains dissatisfied. And this is exactly what Krishna is also describing in the Bhagavad Gita, right? That no matter how much you collect materially, you can have the entire universe, as Hiranyakashipu did. But these material objects will not satisfy you. So Prahlad Maharaj, he is then born after Hiranyakashipu comes back, then Kayadu comes back. He's born, but instead of being a demon, because of his hearing, then he becomes a devotee of the Lord and becomes like a saint. So his other name is he's the child saint. And as a child, as a young child, Prahlad is always absorbed in meditating and chanting the names of Krishna or Lord Vishnu, Lord Narayana, right? That he's always meditating on him. And he's not affected by all the demoniac qualities of his father. So one day, Hiranyakashipu, he gets angry that why is my child so religious, so faithful to my greatest enemy, right? For him, Lord Vishnu is the greatest enemy, and my own child is against him. How many of us feel like that sometimes? Parents, your own children don't listen to exactly what you want them to do. And I remember I went to my cousin's house last week. I'll just share a quick story. I went to my cousin's house last week, and my little baby was there. And she started misbehaving, and I said, "Hey, Lalita, you need to do exactly what your dad says, right? Exactly what your dad says." And my cousin, who has older kids, she started laughing at me. She said, "Are you crazy? They're not going to do a single thing that you say," right? And of course, I know that's true, but despite that, I still want my child to behave exactly in the way that I want them to behave. And of course, it doesn't end up happening exactly like that. But, so Hiranyakashipu becomes very angry, right? He becomes angry and he says, I'm going to send you to a school that is taught by two people that I handpick. And those two people are Sanda and Amarka. And they're actually the sons of Shukracharya, which is the guru of the demons. And Sanda, anybody know what Sanda means in Hindi? Bull. Yeah, bull. So Sanda means bull. Amarka, what does Marka mean? Marka means light. So Amarka means not light or darkness, right? So what is the symbolism here? Is that, what does a bull do? A bull is like, charge first, think later, right? Charge first, think later, or act first and think second. So similarly, if we act first and think second, then we will ultimately be in ignorance or darkness. So these two names are very applicable to this story. So he sends his child to Sanda and Amarka, and he says that teach my son how to be a king like me. A king like me. Teach him politics. Teach him how to conquer other kingdoms. Teach him how to defeat the enemy. Teach him how to control one's subjects. Teach him how to trick someone into feeling good and then doing what you want from them. Do we sometimes do that? We make people feel good, and then then we get them to do what we ultimately want. Teach him all of these things. And so Prahlad Maharaj goes to the school, but because of his divine nature, he does not accept those teachings. Right? He simply hears them and lets them out. Kind of like what you do to me. You hear and then you let it out. So after he goes to school, then his father calls him back and says, "Okay, summer vacation, why did you come to the kingdom? And tell me what you've learned." So Prahlad, being a very pious person, he respects his father. You can see here, he bows down to his father. He respects his father greatly. And then Hiranyakashipu asks him, "Oh, my dear son, what have you learned in school?" And what does Prahlad Maharaj say? He says that, "My dear father, I actually did not learn anything useful in school. I only remembered my Lord Vishnu. For some reason, they were teaching us about enemies and friends. But if one is absorbed in the thought of Lord Vishnu, then there is no such enemy or friend. Everyone is equal." Right? Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita too, the wise sage sees everyone as equal. So Prahlad Maharaj is giving these instructions to his father. And he says, "Father, what are you doing? You also should pray to Lord Vishnu." And of course, then Hiranyakashipu becomes so angry. And he says, "How dare you not only worship him, you take his name in my court." How dare you take my enemy's name in court? And when he's, even though he was holding him in his lap, he immediately flings him, throws him off his throne, and says, put this boy to death. Because he is not my child. He's not my child if he doesn't follow exactly what I say. He's just as good as a thorn on the side of one's leg. Though it may be a part of my body, it is better to amputate that part of the leg than to keep the thorn and the disease within it. So he orders his death. Oops, I skipped the slide. Oh no, I missed the slide. I didn't even put the slide. Sorry, he orders his death, I'll just tell you. He tries so many things to kill him. Throws him in a pit of snakes. Poisonous snakes, and he keeps the snakes very hungry before they go. And then what happens? Prahlad Maharaj is simply always chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. There you go. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Prahlad Maharaj is always chanting the names of the Lord, despite what all different things that his father is trying to do. So what happens when he gets thrown in the pit of snakes? Then the snakes begin to surround him and do his parikrama. And though they are cobras, they all begin to respect him. Then they say, what is happening? Then they try to stab him with their trident. And what happens? He feels like it is like little toothpicks touching his body. Then they try to throw him off a mountain. But when they throw him off the mountain, then ultimately the Lord appears and catches him. And then he floats down the river right back into the kingdom. Then they give elephants and they say, trample him. And then what do the elephants do? They end up taking him on his trunk and playing with him just like their own child. He gets his sister, we can't go into detail, he gets his sister who has a boon to never be burned, to sit with him in fire. And what happens? Ultimately, the sister dies. That's why we celebrate Holika, right? And that's why they burn fire. They do so many other things, so many different, they poison him. They try to feed him food with poison. But what does he do? He offers the food to the Lord prior, and then he takes it, and ultimately that is nourishment. And so on and so forth. So they try so many things to kill him, but because Prahlad Maharaj remains very tolerant and peaceful, and is always meditating and chanting the name of Krishna, then nothing happens to him. So then Hiranyakashipu becomes very upset. He becomes really morose, actually. It's described his skin loses all of his luster, and he becomes very sad. He says, I cannot even kill my own son. What to speak, I've conquered the 3 universes, but my son, who's just 5 years old, I cannot even touch him. So he thinks, has this person come to kill me? Is this person my ultimate source of death? So while he's being sad and morose, then the 2 teachers, Sanda and Amarka, come again and say, look, he's just a 5-year-old boy. He's just a child. Right now he's doing all of these, mischievous activities, just like a young boy does. He's disobeying your order because that's what kids do. But slowly, as he grows up, he will be in your control. So immediately upon hearing this, Hiranyakashipu becomes really happy and he says, what should we do? What should we do? He says, send him back to school. We'll take care of it this time. And this time we'll be very careful not to let him grab any book, not to let him associate with anyone else. We will put our 100% attention on him. So Prahlad goes back to school. But what happens? One day, Sanda and Amarka, they say, because Prahlad behaves very nicely to them. Remember, as a devotee, it doesn't mean that you're fighting back, right? Just like Arjuna and the Pandavas. For many attempts, they did not fight back. Right? They just tolerated whatever happened. So similarly, Prahlad Maharaj is tolerating all of these instructions. But because he's such a good student, right? He's a pious, he's a well-behaved boy, then Sanda and Amarka have to go away for 3 days. 3 days. And they say, Prahlad, you're such a good student. You know how they have like student monitors, like while the teacher goes to the bathroom or something? Yeah, they assign the best student to be the monitor of the class. So similarly, they assign Prahlad Maharaj to be the student monitor. And as soon as they go away, what does Prahlad do? He says, and you know how, for those of you who have at least been to American schools, as soon as we get a substitute teacher or something, we're all crazy. We don't care about anything that happens. right? So all the students, they all want to play and they all want to go around. He says, no, wait. Come here. I need to teach you some things. And then he begins to teach all of his fellow demoniac king's sons, friends, right? I don't know if I said that right. But he teaches all of them the same Vedic instructions that he learned. And he describes to them that give up this nature of being a demon. And he says many important instructions. He says how rare it is to have a human birth. And you might resonate with some of these lessons, as some lessons that you learned from our Gita course, level 1. That Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhe, that the value of human birth is very rare. It's very rare to be human, so don't waste it. And he describes that in our lifetime, the maximum lifetime of anybody in this world is about 100 years, yeah? Right? And nowadays, of course, it's not even 100, right? It's like maybe 75, 80. How many of us live to 100? Very few, right? And so Prahlad Maharaja is describing that if one lives for 100, but let's say even now, if we take modern examples, 75, 80 years, that 1/3 of your life is gone, what? In sleeping. You sleep about 7-8 hours a day. So 1/3 of your life is gone in just sleeping. And then, like I can give an example of my own child, the first 10 years of your life, you're spending in just growing up and understanding what are you, what is the world, what is everything around it, and all you're doing is just trying to learn the basic skills. And then in your teens, what are you doing? You're trying to play, you're trying to associate with your friends, you're trying to go around, you're trying to enjoy and do all those things. So another 10 years passes. Then in your 20s, you spend your entire life, what? After your education, trying to accumulate things. Trying to accumulate wealth, accumulate a home, accumulate a family, a wife, a husband, all these things. And the next 10 years go. Then by the time you have a child, right, then you're absorbed in raising your children. So your 30s go, right? And then finally, when you're free from your children, so I see some children and parents looking at each other. So finally, when you're free from your children and they grow up, then you finally have just a little bit of time to do something. But by that time, you're 50, 60 years old, right? And these days, like, we have kids late. So 60 years old and your kids are grown up. And then you're halfway walking on a stick and barely making it through the day, right? And what are you going to start at age 60? Something new? Yeah, right. Nobody can start anything new. After they're 25, I guarantee you it's very difficult to start anything completely new. Very difficult. You have to put your mind and big effort into learning something new. I can speak for myself. I tried to learn harmonium, and though I'm somewhat inclined musically, it is very, very difficult for me. Very difficult at this age. Because I've lost that ability to grasp, and I can't dedicate as much time as perhaps when I was a child. So very, very difficult to finally make some time for practicing spiritual life. Right? Because 1/3 goes like sleeping, 20 years go in childhood, and then your last 20 years you may not even be able to do or perform. We all grow up thinking, I'll earn enough money, and then when I retire, I'll finally enjoy it. But what happens by the time you retire? You don't have the capacity to enjoy it. Right? So Prahlad Maharaj is giving all these instructions. All of these instructions saying, what? Don't wait. Don't wait. Don't have this concept in your mind that I should start it after I retire. I'll start going to the bhajans and temples and all this stuff. Don't wait. That's why I said these young people are actually very, very rare and very, very glorious. They're more glorious than you can imagine. You can imagine, because at a very early age, despite having so many attractions and distractions, that they're still coming and somewhat being interested. So being interested is a big thing. Sometimes we want them to do this, and this. But really just their basic interest is like such a glorious thing, right? So we should give credit to all of the young people here as well. So he says, start now. Kaumaram acharat pragya. Don't wait till you're older. Start from an early age. Start at age 5. Prahlad Maharaj is age 5. Start at age 5. And because of the strong attachments in this world, it is very difficult to overcome them. And one should have no enmity towards others. We learned that in the Bhagavad Gita also. that we should understand that our karma or our own actions are bringing our own results, right? And that there's no need to be jealous or criticizing anyone else because they're getting what they're due and we're getting what we are due. So if we learn to tolerate that, that tolerate that happiness and distress, then we can really progress on spiritual life. There's another verse, Desham Satatam Yuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvikam. Tatyanukampam Sushamikshamanu Gunjana Eva Kupitam Vipakam. Hirdvag Vapur Virvidanam Namaste Jivedayo Mukti or Bhakti Sadai Adabhak. Right? That one should learn to tolerate and just simply accept all of those results that are happening to him or her. Right? That if they accept them as that this is the result of my own actions, my own karma, my eyes are focused somewhere else. My eyes are focused towards Krishna. My eyes are focused toward the Supreme Lord. Whatever happens on the side, no worries. Good or bad or happiness, distress, none of this is important. My job is to get out of that cycle. Then one can make really spiritual progress. One can make progress. And so one should perform bhakti, and Prahlad Maharaj gives the 9 limbs: Navada Bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Adasevanam, Archanam, Vasya, Sabhyam, Atmanivedanam, which is what we learned in the previous classes. So when Prahlad Maharaj, his teachers come back in that class, then they see all these demoniac kids all of a sudden have divine nature, right? Because by association, we can make progress. By association. No one can do it alone, because bhakti comes from? Bhakti comes from? Bhakti. Bhakti comes from bhakti. And that means we need to go to someone who has bhakti, right? And just like these demoniac boys, though they were subject to the homes of demoniac kings, but due to the association of a great devotee like Prahlad, then they too started having divine nature. So Hiranyakashipu calls his son back from school, and of course his son only tells him what he has within his heart. And so Hiranyakashipu says, enough with this nonsense. I've given you to the elephants, the snakes, my soldiers, and all these things. I've thrown you off. This time I myself will come and kill you. I am no longer going to waste my time with the recommendations of my sister or others to kill you. I'm going to do it myself. And as he's about to kill him, he's testing Prahlad. He says, your Vishnu, is he everywhere? And he says, yes, he's there. Is he protecting you at all times? Yes, he's protecting not only me, but you too. Then he's saying so many things. And he says, and finally in one pillar of his kingdom, right? He says, is your Lord Vishnu in this pillar too? Is he everywhere? Even in this pillar? And Prahlad Maharaj says, my Prabhu, my Lord is everywhere. He's within you, within me, and in every atom of this universe. So if he's in this pillar, then let me see him. And he takes his fist and destroys and breaks the pillar. And what happens? Right? He hears the sound of a great personality. And it's described that the 3 worlds are shaking once they hear this tumultuous sound, this tumultuous roar. And what comes out? The form of the Lord known as Narasimha. Narasimha Bhagavan ki Jai. Narasimha, he's a half man, half lion. And very ferocious, with many, many arms, with many, many weapons, with so many things. And you can see here, as soon as Hiranyakashipu sees this, he becomes very fearful. He says, I have never seen anything even remotely close to this. And he says, to heck with it. I am no less. I too will fight this great demon. Refers to him like that. Regardless of what he is, I too will fight him. And he, even though he's such a small person, like David versus Goliath, this is of course the opposite story, that he comes and attacks Lord Narasimha. And Lord Narasimha is described, he plays with him just as a Garud or a great bird plays with a tiny snake. Yeah, and he entertains just like a bird, sometimes grabs a snake with his beak, then lets the snake loose and lets him run, then he goes and grabs it. Similarly, the Lord also plays with Hiranyakashipu, or like Tom and Jerry, it's described like a cat and a mouse. A cat sometimes will play with a mouse before finally meeting their death. So, as they fight for so long, and Hiranyakashipu is fighting and fighting and fighting, and then finally the Lord says, okay, it's now time. It's now time. Because upon request of the demigod saying, oh Lord, come on, just get on with it. Get on with it. Get this done. Kill this demon and get rid of him once and for all. So, Lord Narasimha, you can see in this picture, what does he do? He's a half man, he's a half lion. Remember the boons that Hiranyakashipu asked for? He said, may I not be killed by any human or by any animal? Well, he's half man, half lion. May I not be killed on the ground or in the sky? So Lord Narasimha keeps him on his lap. May I not be killed by any weapon? So what does he do? He rips Hiranyakashipu with his nails. May I not be killed in the daytime or the night? So he kills him at sunset, which is neither day nor night. May I not be killed inside or outside? So he kills him in the doorway of the kingdom, which is neither in or out. And so many other things to what? Honor and respect the boon that Lord Brahma gave. Right? And he ultimately kills Hiranyakashipu. And then what happens? Hiranyakashipu remains very angry. After he kills Hiranyakashipu, he garlands himself with the intestines of Hiranyakashipu. And he remains very angry. And he destroys and kills all of the soldiers of Hiranyakashipu. And then finally, after he does that, he's still angry. And why is he angry? Why do you think the Lord remains angry? Can you imagine the Lord being angry? It doesn't seem like something the Lord would do. Why is he angry? Anybody know? Yes.
Because his son was a great leader, and
trying to kill him. The Lord, his number one quality is Bhakta, that he's the protector and maintainer of his devotee. Right? He's like the nourisher of his devotee. So when his devotee is tortured by another, then he does not remain calm. Just like Arjuna and just like the Pandavas, after a certain point, they too also showed their strength and prowess. In fact, the other day I heard one lecture, which was slightly about a different topic, but the lesson is the same. That when one's dinta or humility or tolerance becomes misinterpreted as weakness, then one is allowed to show their strength. Does that make sense? When it's misinterpreted as weakness, like that, oh, you are tolerant, therefore you are weak, and therefore I will take over you. Then one can display his strength, right? So in the same fashion, the Lord, he takes care of his devotee, but he's angry, he's furious, and all the demigods come and approach the Lord after he kills Hiranyakashipu. And they glorify him so much. Lord Brahma glorifies him, Lord Shiva glorifies him, Indra glorifies him, the Varnas glorify him, the Gandharvas glorify him, all the residents of the heavenly planets glorify him. What do they say? They say, thank you, my dear Lord, for killing Hiranyakashipu, because Lord Shiva's prayer is totally different, so I don't want to include him in this. But they say, because now I have my kingdom back. Now I have my family back. Now I have my post back. Now I have peace back. All these things. Therefore, we glorify you. So what is their glorification actually? That, oh, now you have made my life back better. Just think about that, right? But the Lord is not satisfied at all after hearing all of these prayers. Then they even bring Lakshmi Devi. Lakshmi Devi comes. And because she's the consort or the wife of Lord Vishnu, they say, you approach the Lord. Maybe he'll calm down with you. But as she approaches the Lord, then even Lakshmi Devi is not able to pacify him. And then finally, Lord Brahma goes to Prahlad and he says, my son, please, you go to Narasimhadeva. You go, for only your devotion can pacify him. And then when Prahlad approaches Lord Narasimha, immediately the Lord's heart melts. The Lord's heart melts and he takes Prahlad in his lap, and just like a lioness or a lion licks their cub, similarly, he shows affection in this way to Prahlad. And Prahlad Maharaj then glorifies Lord Narasimhadeva and says, "Oh, my dear Lord," what does he pray? He prays, "My dear Lord, how much trouble I gave you, that you had to come just to rescue me." Right? That even I may suffer for so many lifetimes. That is no problem for me. But I should only remain attached to your lotus feet. That you took so much pains to come and just rescue this Prahlad. What need is that? Oh, I'm so sorry, my Lord, for troubling you. And he glorifies him in this manner. So many glorifications by Prahlad Maharaj. We're going to go a little deeper next time in this. But he's honoring and worshiping the Lord, not for self-satisfaction, but because of his love and affection and bhakti towards the Lord. And he glorifies him, and then Narasimhadev becomes very pleased. He becomes very pleased, and what does he say? He says, "My dear son, my dear Prahlad, I want you to have one boon. Ask anything, and I will give it to you." And Prahlad Maharaj says, "My Lord, I don't want anything. I don't want anything. I'm not a businessman. I didn't do this worship to get some kind of boon, to get something from you. I only did this worship because I love you, because I have faith and attachment to you. I didn't come to get anything." Then Lord Narasimha says, no. But if I have come, then I have to give something. This is my nature. Your nature may not be to ask, but my nature is to give. Then Prahlad, what does he say? "Okay, Lord, if you want to give me one boon, then you please forgive my father. Forgive my father. Consider it that he did it unknowingly. And even though he did so many despicable activities, that you please forgive him." And Lord Narasimha says, "Oh, that's already done. That's already done, because as soon as I touch someone, then unka udhar ho jata, like they're already liberated. There is no need for you to ask this, because that's already happened."
21 generations up and down.
Then Prahlad Maharaj says, then Lord Narasimha says, "Forget about just your father. I have liberated 21 generations of your past and 21 generations of your future." That this is the glory of a pure devotee in one's family. That not only do they save themselves, but you know how we have forefather worship and pitradan and all these things to honor our ancestors, that automatically by worshiping and becoming a devotee of the Lord, they're already saved, they're already satisfied, because the Lord sees that a pure devotee has been born in the family. Wow, the whole family is glorious. The whole family is glorious. So he says, no, ask me something else. Ask me something else. This is already done. Then he says, "My dear Lord, I ask you for one thing. I pray that whatever pain and suffering the entire universe is getting as a result of the karmas that they go through, they are also innocent. They don't know. Some don't know that because they did this, the bad things happen. They don't know. So all of their pain and suffering, you please give to me. Give to me. And you liberate the entire universe." Then Narasimhadev becomes very emotional. And he says, "My dear son, how you can ask for this? How you can ask for pain for yourself and liberating others? This is the nature of a devotee, right? The nature of a devotee is that they're always worried about the suffering of the other living entities in this world. That's why they want to teach, like Prahlad Maharaj is teaching the sons and all this, and then he's saying, "Give me the pain." And then Lord Narasimhadev says, here is what I can promise. That if someone who hears this story of you, of you as a great devotee of the Lord, if someone hears it with faith and with dedication, then they will automatically be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. So, by hearing the story, by hearing the Vedic scriptures, with faith and dedication, by hearing the examples of the devotees, then it's like being liberated from the cycle of birth and death. Now you may think, I have heard this story. Sure, I yawned a few times, no problem. It's all right, I did it with faith and dedication. And you're saying, yes, but we also have to remember one thing. Just like the fan example, right? The fan is spinning. The fan is spinning. And by hearing these stories, it's like switching off the fan. It may take some time, some more revolutions before it finally comes to a complete stop. But the surety is there that once the switch is off, then the fan will turn off. Once we hear these stories of the Bhagavatam, once we apply these lessons in our life, that is faith and dedication, right? Not just hearing, but also applying. That's real faith and dedication. Then ultimately, this fan too will stop. And this cycle of birth and death too will stop. So, lessons from Prahlad in the Gita, I was going to ask you guys these. That there are so many lessons in this story. And despite me talking for so long, I have just brushed on the teachings. Because again, it's 11 chapters, so big, that there are unlimited lessons that we can match with the Gita. One is that manmana bhav, that Prahlad Maharaj is completely manmana. Krishna says in 18.65, manmana bhav madbhakto madhyaji namaskuru mamivesha shishatyabde pratijanme priyosime. That absorb your mind in me, absorb your dedication to me. And you can see, despite going through so many sufferings of distress, Prahlad Maharaj always maintains that. And he has tolerance and humility. He's suffering externally so many things. So many things happen to him, but he remains very peaceful and calm. And he also remains very humble. Even though his father is trying to attack him, what does that mean? What is a humble person? One who wants the welfare of someone else, even if they're attacking. Like a blade of grass. We step on the blade of grass, what happens as soon as we walk away? The grass just lifts right back up. Right? Does it go and say, curse this man for walking on me? Never. Or a tree. A tree, even if you chop it down, what does it do? It gives fruits and shade. Right? So similarly, this tolerance, humility was displayed by Prahlad Maharaj because he prayed for his father, even despite being attacked so many times. He was equal in all situations. He had no fear because he became fearless. Trayate mahato bhayatneya vikram nashasti pratyavaya navidite salpam apyasta dharmasya trayate mahato bhayatneya. One is relieved of all fears when one makes any effort in spiritual life. And then finally, of course, the Lord promises in the final part of Bhagavad Gita that, "O Arjun, just act and fight under me, and then you will be completely protected." Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj was also